can hear you.
Good. Let's do a mic check on Councilmember Sundberg. I see him. I'm looking for Councilmember Jurinsky. I don't see her yet.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Councilmember Sundberg.
Hey, Steve. Okay. Well, it's 8:30, so we'll got a quorum with the two of us. We'll get going. I don't see on the agenda the minutes. I don't know if that was.
No, we were having some difficulties producing it. I apologize. We will.
No problem. I just want to make sure I didn't have something missing from my agenda that was on there. So with that, I'll jump to the consent items. Councilmember Sundberg, did you have any questions about any of the consent items?
No, not yet. No.
Then first up is the item 3A, the Public Safety Action Plan update. And I'll turn that over to you, Jason.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and walk through that real quick. So obviously the first item up is fully staffing the department and providing ongoing industry-leading training. I think it'd probably be a good time, if you're okay, to let police give you a real quick update on their trip to New York City for lateral recruiting. I think that was a very innovative effort on their part to try and recruit some laterals and go to an area we thought we'd have a lot of success, and I think we were successful. So Chief Oates, can you or somebody from your team give a real quick update just in terms of the success on that operation?
And before you do that, just really quickly, hate to jump in. Councilmember Jurinsky just sent me a text and said that she didn't have the correct link. Can somebody shoot that over to her?
We'll do that right now, sir.
Thank you. Chief Oates or whoever from APD, go ahead.
Your mic's not working, Chief Oates. Something's going there. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like you're on mute, but I'm not hearing you. Perhaps we'll have Chief Jewell. Are you on? Could you maybe jump in and give a quick update on how that operation went?
I can, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Great, absolutely. Chief Oates, if you get your mic working, just let me know. Yeah, so last week we sent a team of recruiters to New York City. It was well advertised in advance through social media platforms, and also a lot of cooperation, surprisingly, through the Police Benevolent Association for the New York officers that also actually reached out and sent the fact that we were going to be there to about 24,000 of their membership. So they're obviously using that as a bargaining tool. So we reached about over 1,000 individuals. We had a home base in one of the hotels in a conference room where their membership could come and submit an application, get information. But what we also found was even more effective was they started sending teams out into the precincts, into New York City, Brooklyn, Bronx, Harbor Patrol, you name it. They were out just in the street contacting people. And then, again, surprisingly, they were even getting invited into the precincts to talk to officers, to recruit officers in their own precincts. It's very shocking, but it just tells you a little bit about where that agency is. They're very have a lot of internal strife. So just to kind of be a little succinct, we did generate, it's changing a little bit every day, but we generated about 14 direct lateral applications and a bunch more leads that we are working on for either the October lateral class or the January lateral class. So now, of course, the process will probably eliminate some of those folks, but that's great numbers. And then in addition, we reached out to civil service, and it sounds like it generated numerous basic applications out of New York as well. So that's also a fringe benefit of this was some of the New York officers that didn't have the 3 years of qualifying experience, but would be willing to go through a basic academy, or we just reached people that were interested in law enforcement that weren't on the job yet. So that was a nice fringe benefit of it. And in addition, one last comment I'll have is that the social media information that we sent out ahead of time was shared numerous times and actually across the country. So we ended up with an applicant from Las Vegas, Los Angeles, all that used the QR code that we used actually to market to New York. So just the sharing on social media generated some leads across the country. So that was not something we necessarily expected. So that was nice to see. And then we just, we've hot washed it. We're putting together a lot of information for the website as we get the Epic website up here in the next month. So it gave us a lot of information for us to put on that website that was, the important, most frequently asked questions to those individuals out there. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. If there's direct questions, I can certainly answer them.
And folks, is my microphone now working?
It is, Chief.
We can hear you, Chief.
If I could offer a quick comment, this was really a leap of faith that this new way of recruiting might work. I think one of the most important things is we learned a whole bunch of lessons in this first foray, and we've got other targeted areas of the country where we think that cops are significantly underpaid versus what we can offer, and also quality of life that we can offer. So I have every confidence that we will refine this process as we go to other areas of the country. So it's a great learning opportunity for all of us.
Councilmember Zvonek?
Yeah, I can kind of hear you, but go ahead.
No, let's see. Is that any better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I was having a hard time getting on a meeting this morning, so I didn't get to hear the first about minute and a half. I heard that we're generating leads. Have we hired anybody?
So from the effort, we have the applications, so they're starting to get processed right now. So as far as actually job offers, no, at this point, there haven't been any job offers from the trip.
And how many are in our, and maybe this isn't, is Sundberg giving a presentation today? Does anybody know?
He's not on there, but we could ask him to because so we're on 3A, which is the action plan, and we're talking specifically about the first the fully staffed. And Chief Jewell just went through the highlights from the New York recruitment effort. I think the thing that he mentioned that you may have missed was that there were 14 lateral applications that came out of the New York trip, and then there were others that came through the Civil Service Commission. There were some people who did not qualify for the lateral application, but have applied through the basics. So obviously this is just specifically referring to the New York recruiting effort.
So I guess my big concern is if we're not doing anything to address the morale within the department, and we're going to put in all this effort to bring in officers from New York or from wherever we're doing these recruitment efforts, I don't think we're really solving anything. I did send an email to you, Jason Batchelor, requesting an updated list of officers that had left in June and July. I wanted numbers of officers that have left. I wanted how many, and I also wanted their names. I never heard back from you. I was hoping Sundberg would be on here this morning to get that update. So what I've been doing in the meantime is I have a pretty solid group of officers within the department that have been compiling lists of officers that have left in June and July, as well as officers that currently have their notice in to leave the department, and that's anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks that all of these officers will be leaving. This is a pretty significant list I have, and I just wanted to cross-reference it with what the department has, and I want to make sure that we are getting accurate information, because what it looks like to me is that we are not stopping the bleeding, and we are not stopping officers leaving. So that's fine. We can be out doing all these recruitment efforts in New York or wherever, but we are not addressing the problems in the department, and officers are still leaving at an alarming rate. And this list of officers that I have, this is a list of officers with experience. And so that's basically my concern, and we're chasing leads. We've hired no one. We've made no job offers, and we still have people leaving at an alarming rate. So I would like a list from whomever. I would like a list of all officers and their names that have left in June and July, and the ones that have notice in.
Is there anybody on who can answer the question about the numbers for June and July?
Sure. So the backup for 3A includes the numbers by month. So you'll see that in June and July, we had 6 in June, 6 in July. Year to date, the number is 49. So that includes, as we've discussed in the past, that includes both losses from the academy, losses during field training, and then either resignations, retirements, or any other separation. So the good news is through July, we are at 49, and then that compares very favorably to some previous years in terms of, at this point, we were, last year we were at 77. So again, so we've certainly seen that number tick down, and we'll have to look at what we're seeing. Officers do not have to provide, weeks ahead. I know there's often some notice, but a lot of times it's not, it's not necessarily formal notice. So we can certainly check on those numbers and see where we're at.
Councilmember Zvonek, those numbers do not add up with the list that I have. I have more names of officers that have left other than 6 in June and 6 in July. So I would just like to put that out there that my list does not add up to that. I also have a list of officers with notices in that are leaving.
Okay. Well, is there a reason, Jason, why would we have different numbers in terms of officers leaving?
Not having seen her list, I'm not sure, but we're happy to provide the details on all our numbers in terms of what's in those 6 in terms of resignations, in terms of retirements, or field training, or that. We're happy to provide that breakdown.
Okay, great. Other questions for Chief Jewell or Oates?
No.
Jason, you want to go on to the next
Yes,
item?
thank you. So the next item is sort of data-driven policing, and I think a great update there, Chief Oates, if you don't mind, if you want to give an update on the first week or two of our DART team in terms of data-driven focused efforts, and kind of give some of the numbers coming out of that team.
Yeah, I'd like to defer to Chief Lanigan, who's got the details.
Thanks, Chief.
Chad, you're on mute.
I'm not on mute. The TART team's been out and about. They've been doing a great job. I've also got Lieutenant Poppy on here, who has the running spreadsheet of all the arrests, misdemeanor, felony, auto theft, recoveries, as well as guns. So his spreadsheet's more update than mine, so I'm going to lead to him to give me a quick update on actual numbers. And then if there's any questions about DART, I'd be glad to answer where we're going with DART and what they've been up to. So with that, I'll give it to Lieutenant Poppy.
Good morning. Is my microphone working?
Yes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for letting me be here. Just a quick rundown on some of the, I think, most impressive stats we've seen. They've been working now. They had 4 days their first week, 2 days their second week. They came in Tuesday on their day off to work, and then they worked yesterday. Throughout all that, they've made 10 felony arrests, 14 misdemeanor arrests. They've recovered 11 stolen cars, and they've seized 3 guns. It was kind of the highlight of a lot of their work they've done. So in total, that's 24 arrests that they've made in just about less than 8 days of working. And I can probably figure out some more if you had specific questions related to stats for the team.
And I just want to add that the areas they've been working is up in North Aurora, around Colfax and Beeler, where we've had our recent homicide. They've been did a larger operation in and around the town center of Aurora, and made numerous arrests there as well. The means by recovering stolen vehicles using the Star Chase system. They've had numerous deployments of the Star Chase system to follow stolen cars around. But the biggest thing I really want to emphasize here is, out of all these arrests, they've only had one use of force of these violent criminals that they're taking off the street. So kudos to those out there working the restraint that they're seeing and showing is amazing. So with that, if council has any questions for me about the DART team, I'd be glad to ask it or answer it.
Any questions for?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are we, Chief Lanigan, are we having any problems with either our jail or Arapahoe County Jail taking these people that the DART people are getting off the street, or is that pretty smooth effort?
Right now, we're not having any problems with the jails taking any of our arrests. It'll be interesting to see how that moves through the judicial system, and that's one of the things we are also tracking is how these cases are adjudicated at the end. As you know, an adjudication could take anywhere from a month. They could go in and just plead guilty, or it could take, it could take years for it to adjudicate through the process. So here, hopefully in the next month or two, we'll have some better ideas of how some of these auto theft cases are being adjudicated, both in our municipal court and our county court. One big thing to know is many of these arrests, and Lieutenant Poppy can probably give me the data on it, but they're all juveniles. So the juvenile system is a struggle for law enforcement, not only just in Aurora, but across the country, on how to keep those juveniles from getting out and the recidivism rate of what they're doing.
And can I ask another question?
Yep, go ahead.
If you guys are going to gather this data, can you also include not just how they're adjudicated, but can you also include judges' names on each case? And I would also like to know on each case which ones were defended by our own public defender's office.
It wouldn't be.
And I'm going to defer to Lieutenant Poppy. I'm not sure if we can get judges' names off of our data, and maybe Lieutenant Poppy will know that off of Colorado courts.
Yeah, I don't think that's a huge problem for us to do. As we track these things through the Colorado court system, it'll note what judge presided over various hearings, at least on the felony and county court level. I'm not real familiar with how we do that through municipal court, so that would probably take a little research on my part to figure out just how we come up with that answer.
Okay, yeah, whatever we can do on that. I want judges' names for each case.
We'll do our best, ma'am, to include as much data in the outcome with each case we can.
Councilmember Zvonek, it might be helpful to have at this point a conversation about auto theft prosecutions and state versus muni.
Yeah,
we're going to discern and make those referrals. It's a little complicated because when there are other charges associated, it's further complicated when there are juveniles.
right.
So Chad, could you explain to the council members how that's going to go? And our commitment is we're going to track those cases and see what the results are in light of the new order. Chad, if you could.
Sure. So if and when we can, our best bet is to always charge everything into muni court, because we get a bigger, we'll have a better sentence out of the muni court, especially after Councilmember Zvonek's recent push for sentencing guidelines. But whenever, let's just say that if there's a stolen gun in the car and we end up going a palpo case, which is when a felony offender is in possession of a firearm, we might have to send that whole case. We can't bifurcate the case and send half county court and half to municipal court. So Lieutenant Poppy is on all of these arrests. Lieutenant Poppy is intimately involved with each one of those, and we're always looking how we can get the biggest bang for the buck, if you may, and whichever court will oversee that prosecution.
Other questions?
I have a couple questions, Councilmember Zvonek.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Chief Lanigan, can you refresh my memory on what the Star Chase system is?
Sure. So the Star Chase system it's a GPS tracking system. So we'll get up behind a stolen vehicle or a vehicle that we know might have just been used in a robbery or a crime spree of some kind. And we can actually shoot. It's a big gooey blob, and it hits the back of the car, the side of the car or something. And then we can track that car wherever it goes. And then we can try to then arrest the people inside of that car, excuse me, when they stop. So it's a tactic that we can use to assure that we can take them safely into custody and we don't get into a car chase or anything like that.
Thank you. And then sort of a follow-up related to the juveniles being arrested. There's data collection, I imagine, that's going to take place. For example, average age of these young people, are they truant with respect to the last school year? You know, where they are registered for school, where they might reside, et cetera. That's all being collected.
We are tracking age. Truancy, there's no way that we will have that information. That's a school issue.
Unless we work with the school system.
Yeah, that will be a bigger undertaking. We'll have to look into that to see if they are truant, if they're going to school at all. Of course, when they get to that 17, 18-year-old age in there, we just don't know. And but we can look into that and try to see if they are truant and where they're at in the school system.
Okay.
And you had another part of your question. I'm sorry, I just didn't.
No, I think that's about it. You know, perhaps where they reside in the city and just some similarities, perhaps.
We can definitely track whether they're a resident of the city. We can track resident or non-resident. We'll have their address. We can always go back into the system and see what they list as their home address. But we can, on our database, we can track, so we quickly know whether they're a resident or a non-resident.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You bet.
Other questions on this topic? Okay, Jason, you want to go to number 3?
Yeah, number 3 is youth violence. As council is aware, Kristen Amperan has recently resigned from her position, so we're in a state of transition with this one right now. We do have Sadia on, who is overseeing this temporarily until we refill the youth violence prevention program. She's working with Jessica Prosser to make sure that the direction that council has given us up to now continues to be implemented. And so I will ask for a little grace on behalf of Sadia. She's just taken this over. She's jumped in with both feet. But if you have any questions or guidance for Sadia, I know she'll appreciate it. And with that, I'll turn it over to council. And Sadia, I guess anything to add?
I would just recommendation or guidance, I guess, would just be as we're getting ready to go back into into a new school year. I know both school districts, both of the bigger school districts in our city, APS and Cherry Creek, are this is obviously a major topic for them as well. And I think just making sure that we're doing as much as we can to coordinate efforts with our 2 major school districts would be beneficial and helpful. If nothing else, then we go into item 4.
Item 4 is increasing the number of clinicians on crisis response team and increasing our response to the mental health calls. So we, as you all know, we had the internal audit results presented last month. We are working through diligently on implementing those and then also preparing the budget. We will be back actually in September with a much more detailed response to the audit and our efforts with both the crisis response team and the the mobile response team. But we do have Courtney and Sergeant Bunch on to answer any questions and provide some updates on that. So I'll turn it over to Courtney and Jake.
So if there's no questions, I can give an update. An RFP, a competitive bidding process, has just been opened for a clinical service provider. As we know, that was a big part of hiring and what was recommended within the audit. So to be in compliance with the audit, we have opened that process. It did start August 1. that closes on August 29th. So we're hoping to be under contract by about November. That way we can begin that transition. And that way, if we do have clinicians that would like to be retained, that if there is a change in agency, that we are able to transition them and onboard them without a gap in time. So at this time, there's no other updates.
Any questions? Councilmember Sundberg or Jurinsky?
No.
Okay, Jason, final item, homeless encampment abatements.
So on homeless camp abatements, do we have anybody on here from Housing and Community Services to provide an update of the numbers in terms of where we're at and what we're seeing on that front?
Yeah, Councilmember Sundberg, this is Jessica Presser. We are continuing to refine what we're tracking related to abatements. We are tracking the number. From the numbers you can see, we are at about 29 for July. About 10 of those were CDOT, so still seeing a lot of issues in the CDOT areas. We are working to schedule an additional meeting. We have some ongoing meetings with CDOT, but very specifically talk about some physical barriers around many of our interchanges. So that's ongoing. And then we are tracking, location and things like that, the number of people that receive shelter. And we do have construction underway for the new pallet shelters at the 2 safe outdoor spaces. I was out there last week, and so they should be installed in about 2 weeks. And that provides an opportunity for folks in the encampments to transition into those pallet shelters. They will be the new ones just for people transitioning out of the encampments. So that is all underway. And we are also looking to bring on additional staff that can help with coordination with Keeson and with CDOT. And being able to get camps posted quickly and the abatements done. And I will also just say that we've also been meeting with Deputy Chief Cassie Carlson related to PAR being on site, and we are having good cooperation with that. So just want to reassure that coordination and collaboration with PD on making sure these abatements get taken care of quickly.
Jessica, one question I had is that have we had any holdups as a result of bed capacity in terms of abatements?
Councilmember Zvonek, we have not. We do have still, even with the new pallet shelters, additional space at Comitis. And so, we have had some folks that have gone over to Comitis, but we have not had any holdups based on bed capacity this time.
Okay, other questions?
I have a question.
Sundberg, then Jurinsky.
So, Jessica, in the event of an abatement with the police, would the police in each situation typically offer the choice of services, whether that is shelter, a meal, services beyond that?
So during the days before the abatement and then the day of the abatement, we do have our outreach teams that come out. So those are the folks that are interacting with people experiencing homelessness. Typically, we're offering services for them to come into the Day Resource Center to receive those services, case management, food, medical, workforce, anything like that is done usually at the Day Resource Center. So we're offering transportation. So during the day of the abatement, we're really more focused on transferring people.
Okay, thank you.
Jurinsky?
Yeah, so my question was also about shelter beds. Jessica, I wanted to know, you just said a few of them have gone to Comitis. Are they going to Comitis as a result of an abatement, or are these people just showing up randomly off the street that have nothing to do with an abatement?
No, these are folks that from the abatement are being transported over to Comitis, are agreeing to go into shelter and are being transported. So that's specifically from the abatements.
And you said we abated 29 camps in July. How many people was that took us up on our offer to go to the shelter?
I don't have that number in front of me specifically. I want to say it was less than 10. But there's obviously more than 10 people that were, more than 30 people abated. Some of the camps have several people in them. But I'm happy to get that number back to you. And we can include that ongoing in these updates as well.
Okay, I think that would be helpful, Jessica, just to know, because part of the intent of the camping ban was to try to get some of these folks who are in the encampments on the sides of the roads and getting them into the shelter system, so that hopefully they can have access to services that they're otherwise not receiving in the encampment. So that would be a good data point, I think, going forward. Any other questions on 3A? Otherwise, we will move on to 3B. Seeing none, so item 3B, Aurora Fire and Rescue Resolution approving mutual aid agreement between Aurora Fire and Rescue and South Adams County, County Fire Protection. I think this is Chief Weber, right?
Good morning, council members. And
Oh.
Sherry, can I share my screen, please, so I can show my PowerPoint? I don't know if Sherry heard me or not.
Sharon, can you allow him to share his PowerPoint?
If it's not working, is it okay if we just go on? I'm assuming that everybody's seen it. I mean, well, at least the council members have seen it.
Yeah, Jason, is there a way to share it? If not, I would assume it's in our backup here.
Give me just a second, see if we can pull it up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And
Sorry, Chief, having difficulties over here on this end. Which presentation would you like to present?
It's
Yes,
the mutual aid agreement with South Adams County Fire Protection District.
Okay, hold on.
Councilmember Zvonek, do I just have one random agenda? Because item 3B for me is Aurora Fire Rescue attrition update.
that should be 2B.
Okay, I don't know what I have.
Yeah, mine is the same way.
Yeah, I think we were sent the wrong agenda, and that's what I was.
Are you looking in eScribe?
I'm in eScribe, yes.
Mine shows 3B and it shows this, and it's under the PowerPoint is in here.
I don't have any of that. I have August 11th, 2022. Item 3A is August 2022 police attrition update, and 3B is July 2022 Aurora Fire Rescue attrition update. I don't have any of these.
What do you have under 4 then?
Under 4, I have general business. 4A is public safety action plan.
You're on 4B. It just, for some reason, it's 4 for you, or 4 for you guys and 3 for me.
Well, yeah, that's helpful.
You guys are unfortunately experiencing the same technical difficulties that we did as we were pulling the packet together. So Sherry struggled long and hard with this one, trying to get the packet, and every time she thought she had it pinned down, it slipped out. So we appreciate any patience you can give us. This was definitely one of those we are experiencing technical difficulties. So thank you all.
Yeah, so you would be Councilmembers Jurinsky and Sundberg. It'd be item 4B, and in the backup there, this PowerPoint you should find it. It should be the.
Yeah, I see it when I scroll down. I see the South Adams under 4B. I mean, I see it now. So is that where?
Yep, that's where we are.
Okay.
I'm able to share my screen now.
Okay, go ahead, Chief.
Is everybody able to see that?
Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you for letting me present today. Just a quick background on what is a mutual aid agreement? A mutual aid agreement is a partnership between jurisdictions that involves a formal request for assistance. Just so you know, we have quite a few of these that we've have done in the past and have recently updated. So with this one, this is a brand new one. We were reached out by Adams County Fire Protection District to produce this mutual aid agreement. This will only be for fire-related emergencies such as structure fires, not EMS calls. So it's going to be few and far between when we go to help them and if we call them in to help us. And like I said, both entities will supply either an engine or a ladder truck for this request. The areas in question, it's pretty much north of Pena Boulevard and west of the airport. So the specifics are 81st on the south, Buckley Road on the west for us, 96th on the north, and then the Denver National Airport fence line. This is the area that we will be responding into. And with that, South Adams will do 26th Avenue on the south for us, in between Dunkirk on the west, Pena on the north, and Hayes Mount Road on the east. So these areas don't produce a lot of calls, especially if it's structure fire related. It's even going to be less. This area, we had a mutual aid agreement with Sable Altura, and South Adams County Fire Protection District annexed that area. So in essence, we had a mutual aid agreement already. It just was with a different fire department. Now I'm just requesting that we update this agreement and make it with the now the responding fire department, which is South Adams County. And like I said earlier, AFR maintains mutual aid agreements with Denver, South Metro, Buckley, which is one we just recently did. So this is something that is not new to Aurora Fire. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm just asking if there's any questions, and I'm hoping that I can take this forward to study session.
Any questions or objection to moving this forward to study session?
No.
No, I fully support this.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. We'll move this forward to study session. Next up is Aurora Fire and Rescue EMS protocol.
And that will be myself and mainly Dr. Hill will be presenting that. So Dr. Hill, are you, I know he's having a little difficulty too, so.
I think I'm on. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So we are wanted to bring this information forward to kind of give an update on topics related to the use of chemical sedatives in the EMS protocols. To start off, this is all information we provided in kind of a handout information. So I won't read that to you guys, but I do want to kind of highlight on certain aspects and take time for questions. The first part of this is, why does EMS, have these kind of medications? And the reason is that when, EMS responds to a person who is having, based on their assessment, has a medical life-threatening emergency or a potentially life-threatening emergency, whether it be traumatic induced or medical in nature, they have an obligation to render aid to that person to the best of their ability. That is what they're called there to do. Sometimes those patients, given the degree of ultramentation, there may be severe levels of agitation or combative behavior, which makes it physically unsafe to render aid to that patient. Either they can't properly assess or can't render a proper treatment for that person. This is not applying to people that we've done extensive training over the last 2 years on really the appropriate, assessment of these kind of situations, as well as decision-making capacity. So, if someone has decision-making capacity and, they don't want help, they don't get help. That there's a patient autonomy aspect to that. This is talking about the times when there is a lack of decision-making capacity, meaning that the patient does not understand the decisions to be made or the questions being, so maybe they're severe ultramentation or unresponsive. And those kind of patients, we act under implied consent to render aid to someone to the best of their ability. So the approach we have, currently in our protocols is one, it's, thorough medical assessment to make sure that, we determine this is a, likely medical emergency or traumatic injury requiring medical treatment, determining, that they're a patient and that the patient does or does not have decision-making capacity. And at that point, it's verbal de-escalation. Okay, they go through an extensive process of training on verbally de-escalating these patients and using other tools with them, other bystanders, family, to get them down from the level of agitation and be as objective as they can to render aid safely. In situations where they use a medication, currently the medication they have is midazolam. Okay, midazolam is a benzodiazepine medication. It's used for seizures. It's used as a sedative for procedures and things like that. The goal of a sedative is not to render someone incapacitated. The goal of a sedative is to make a calming effect so that you can properly render aid to that patient safely. EMS providers specifically are not trained, and it is not part of their scope that they are to use overwhelming physical force to restrain someone. That is not what they do. And so they try to render aid in a way to give them a calming medication to be able to render aid appropriately. So currently we use midazolam. Okay, the protocols are being updated to include a medication called droperidol. Droperidol is completely different than what they currently have, and so it's not duplicative. Droperidol is an antipsychotic medication. It's been around for 55 years. It's been heavily used in EMS for 30 to 40 years, going back to the early 90s. As far as I know, because it's before my time from when I was doing EMS in the 90s. But this one works on the dopamine receptors in the brain, so it's a different mechanism. And the reason why specifically we do this is that there is no one ideal medication that is always the best medication, and particularly in patients who have alcohol ingestion and are severely combative. So if you have someone, let's say that you have a head injury, they're intoxicated, you're trying to render aid to them. Benzodiazepines, and alcohol both hit the GABA receptors, which causes respiratory depression. So it has an increased side effect and risk associated with that. Whereas droperidol goes more to the brain chemistry, working on the dopamine receptor which is why it's an antipsychotic. And so it's got a better safety profile for those patients. One thing I wanted to point out specifically is that this is not, the changes to the protocol are not increasing or changing the philosophy or the protocol as to who needs to be sedated. It's always been the same thing. When you cannot manage it any other way and you have to render aid to that patient in a safe way, that's what those medications are for. So it's the same approach to the patient. It's just saying that if you suspect someone has heavy alcohol intoxication or the head injury patients, those patients do better based on the best evidence we have in medicine, that they do better with droperidol, which is why that is being implemented. This is a widely used medication across the state of Colorado. Every Denver Metro agency uses this approach as well. So we're basically putting it on to becoming compliant with the standard of care and the best medical practices that we have. This has been an extensive year-plus long process of discussions, including individual trainings that were done in May of this year, really not just on the medications themselves, but really just on the whole approach of decision-making capacity, proper de-escalation, proper post-sedation management. Last thing I'll say on it is that the plan for this is that it's going to be monitored the exact same way as the current sedatives are used in our CQI process. So we do a rolling continuous quality improvement process. All of these calls are reviewed by myself to ensure that the medications are being used appropriately by indications by protocol, and that we we're using it correctly, and we're documenting things correctly and using it for the right reasons. And those are all submitted to the consent decree monitor, and this will follow the exact same process of updating that and submitting it to the consent decree monitor in the same process. And we've updated them with this process. They hired an independent consultant, physician, medical director in the East Coast area, who also reviewed this and felt that this was medically appropriate and consistent with best medical practice in EMS. And with that, I will take any questions you have.
Any questions? This was information only, correct?
This is information only, correct?
Any questions, Councilmembers Sundberg or Jurinsky?
I don't have questions, but I just am having a really hard time talking about our Aurora firefighters injecting anybody with anything while we have 2 up for murder right now. And in fact, I wish that Falk would go ahead and deal with this, because I would like to see all of our firefighters and all of our police officers go home at night, every night. And until we know the outcome of the Elijah McClain trials, I don't know why we're talking about injecting anybody with anything. Just my 2 cents.
Other questions? Okay, item, depending on the agenda, 3 or 4D, Havana Corridor retail theft plan. And I think this is Commander Carlson, or Chief Carlson.
Hi, I'm trying to get my video going here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. And I would like to share my screen. So I can, oh, there we go. Perfect. All right, can everybody see that?
Everybody see it okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for allowing us to present on this initiative. So to give you a little background, if I can get it moving, there we go. So I attended the Havana bid meeting, which is as you guys know, the Business Improvement District on the Havana Corridor on July 7th. And that Councilmember Zvonek and the mayor were also in attendance. The main area of concern was regarding retail theft and the concern that thefts have increased. So a lot of large retailers have brought in their regional loss prevention managers. We heard from those folks about some of their concerns. Well, I will tell you that they were all indicated that the stores in Aurora were some of their highest grossing stores, but they were also concerned with their losses. So after chatting with some of these folks, I realized, there might be more we could do. So we went back, looked at the data in that Havana corridor. The statistics don't quite support that it's a major issue. As you can see, we're in year to date, we're at 20 shoplifts, but we believe that these are underreported. And why do we think they're underreported? Well, there's a few reasons. When you look at what's currently happening in traditional responses, with loss prevention, they're not engaging with shoplifters, which we fully support as an agency. We've just seen too many of those go sideways. So they're not engaging with the shoplifter. The other part is they wait for the shoplifter to pass the point of sale. That helps with the prosecution piece when you look at permanently the intent of permanently depriving somebody of an item. And then we also have learned that the criteria varies of when these shoplifts get reported. They vary from store to store about whether they call 911, make an online report, or no report at all. And then our police response, our patrol response, unfortunately, the suspects are usually gone prior to our arrival. So we don't have very many apprehensions. If the suspect is contacted, generally a summons is just issued. So when we talk about, and those are general misdemeanor cases that we're looking at. When we look at felony level response, our current operation is, we're identifying the prolific shoplifter, if you will. So a felony event is identified. So this is the $3,000 TV that's put in the shopping cart at Costco and the person just walks out. So now the detective gets that case and starts reviewing it. Well, then the detective will look at other shoplift cases to see if we have any commonalities. Do we think this person has done this more times and we can build a bigger case? Currently, we'll contact other retailers to connect additional theft incidents that may not have been previously reported, back to my earlier statement that they're not always getting reported. And then at that point, if we learn of more, we'll gather the video and assist in the reporting of the incident to file those additional cases. As you can tell, this is pretty labor intensive and quite inefficient. So after hearing from these folks and chatting with some of our team, we realized that we could probably be more efficient in our response and in turn provide better customer service and then ultimately hold these people accountable that are causing this retail theft. So we've developed some goals of improvement as it relates to the Havana corridor, which ultimately we hope will, and we know will spill over to the rest of the city. But some of our goals are the early identification of patterns of prolific offenders, and then just improve quality of cases on those folks. And then with this improvement of efficiency, allocated limited patrol resources where they can make the most impact. And then streamlining the process for department to address retail theft within our department, and also streamlining the process for retail partners to report the crime. We believe that it's essential that they report the crime so then we can analyze the data. So working with them on how to streamline that. And then obviously to prevent and reduce retail theft. So what have we done this far? The data collection from the previous 5 years, as I displayed, just looking into what data we do have. Part of the group of the initiative is the Intel unit has played an integral part. They've met with the loss prevention managers of the large box retailers along the Havana corridor. And then also doing researching on best practices to reduce the retail theft. We've looked at, we've seen this as a nationwide concern. Some look a little bit different. Some are rings of people. Some are just individuals. And so we've looked at, Omaha's got a good program that we're looking into to figure out what they're doing. Castle Rock actually has one that we're getting in touch with those folks there to see, what are other agencies doing to address this issue. There's an organization of information sharing and networking called the Colorado Organized Retail Crime Association. We've increased membership in that. That is a platform where retailers and law enforcement share information. It's a great way to get that intel, share that information. So we've increased our membership to that group. Our party unit created a retail theft prevention sheet that actually they were just yesterday we're on the Havana corridor passing that out, meeting with the folks down there to try to just share what retailers can do to protect their assets. Furthermore, we'll be doing which we've always done, assessments and how they can help protect again their assets. So it's a collaboration among the Intel unit, crime analyst, PAR, and of course investigations. So what are the next steps? We're going to be meeting with the retailers again, the retail partners, probably at the regional level of those managers. And what we're going to be asking is for them to provide us with their top shoplifters. And this could be a case where they know somebody's hit them 4 or 5 times, but they may not know who it is. Maybe they haven't been identified. But essentially asking them to put that information together so that we can start working cases. We can help them with the identification piece. And then we like to come out with a top 10 prolific shoplifter list. And then working with municipal court or district court on prosecution on that. About a decade ago, some of you may remember, we had very successful shoplifting initiative as it related around the Aurora Mall. And one of the things that we did back then was identifying and flagging prolific shoplifters. So once a person had been convicted of a shoplift, we would flag their name in our record system. So that so that we could, when the different patrol officer went and contacted this individual, they would see that this person's been flagged as a prolific shoplifter, and that was a mandatory arrest situation and not a summons. And this is, we're talking adults. And then it was a mandatory next day appearance, kind of like with the auto theft stuff. So we found that this was extremely successful. In 1 year, there was about a 30% drop in shoplifts. But again, that was a different time where more of those people were being detained by the loss prevention folks. So we had more encounters of those people being detained by loss prevention. So we're looking at, we've already talked with the city attorney's office, working with them for the mandatory arrest next day arraignment on the flag shoplifters like we've done. City attorney's office is very open to working with us to address these concerns. As is the 18th as well. So when we're looking at big cases, we've reached out to the 18th Judicial DA, and they are all on board, and they've had some good successes. We actually had one that we put through a while back. Those were more burglaries, but we know that they'll work with us, and once we designate people as prolific shoplifters, and and getting good outcomes. So. We've designated a detective who was specialized in putting these cases together, and she's done great work prior. In fact, my example of the $3,000 TV that's left Costco, that's a real case that she's working and putting together to make a strong case. And so she's been designated as the detective who will specialize in these cases and being the point of contact for our retailers and putting this stuff together. So we're just hoping for improved communication with those retailers, that they have one point of contact, the person that they can go to. And then as far as improved online reporting for retailers, so I'm also looking at this as a patrol efficiency piece. It's not very efficient for a patrol officer to respond to a cold shoplift where we don't know who the person is. While they might have good video or something like that, we have systems in place that this can still be reported and not take the patrol officer's time, who has other 911 calls for service to go to. So, but what we're hearing from some of the retailers and what we're trying to address is can be cumbersome. It's one thing to, a citizen that makes one online report maybe ever, and then an entity that might have 2 or 3 in a day that they need to report. And so we're hearing that they feel it's a little bit cumbersome. So our folks at the front desk, our front desk supervisors, reached out to the contact at the software company that does our online reporting, and we're exploring ways that there can be a more efficient way. Like, for example, that Kohl's has their own login and it speeds through, maybe it pre-fills, something like that. So we're looking to see if there's more efficiencies there, because we do want them to report those losses so that we can track it again, goes into our data analysis, we can capture, better data. And then again, improving analyst notification on online reports to track patterns and suspects. And that's an area we can improve in-house instead of just going through all the old cases. So working within our systems for improvements there. And then, tracking in our outcomes, how this is going. So assess if the process improvements are leading to stronger cases. Of course, tracking the outcomes of the cases that are filed in municipal and district courts. And then keeping that communication with our retail stakeholders. So soliciting the feedback from the retailers and the loss prevention folks on the process. So that is the kind of where we're at with the Havana Quarter Retail Theft Initiative. Any questions that I can answer?
Questions for Chief Carlson?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say that I do actually have a retail theft ordinance coming forward very soon. And it is specifically regarding the Havana bid.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Sundberg.
Just a comment on the data. We saw the vertical bar graphs, and there was a statement that evidence doesn't show an increase, but 2021 was the highest year out of those all. I think there might be a tendency just for retailers to just shrug their shoulders and put their hands up and say, why bother? You know, if there's no recourse for these crimes, then, you know, why report them? But in what you showed me, I did see an increase in 2021, and perhaps that's carrying through. Just there.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I might, if I said it, there was an increase. Of course, we see that there was. I think what I meant to say is it's not a major issue, but we do believe that it's happening more often than it's getting reported. And that's what we're trying to work toward is improving the reporting.
Let me interrupt you right there and just say, if you own one of those businesses, it was a private business, and you're experiencing those thefts, then it is a major issue to you, right? As the business owner, it's a major issue.
Yes, correct, which is exactly why we're working to be better and how we can, you know, have better outcomes, right? So when, so that we're working with those stakeholders and those business owners about, because we recognize those people aren't sticking around. Even if loss prevention goes up and says, hey, we believe that you stole, can you come back to our loss prevention office with us and wait for police? Nobody really does that anymore. They just take off running. So our apprehension rate is very low compared to what it used to be when I gave those examples from 10 years ago. So what we are hoping that we can do with better partnership with the stakeholders is they're helping us play that role in the apprehension. So they're getting us, they've got great video. They've got all the information about, you know, what was taken, and essentially giving us that information, and we'll work to identify who that person is, looking for patterns. And while I'm talking about big retailers, but we're also looking at the other smaller retailers in the area. Did they experience that? Could it be the same person? And developing better cases that we can then apply for a warrant, because we have all the information now. And apply for a warrant and hold this person accountable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chief Carlson, thanks for putting this together. And at that meeting, it was clear what you said, Councilmember Sundberg, is absolutely correct. There's a level of frustration recognizing that there, you know, once somebody's out the door, there's very little that they feel can be done. And so, you know, the fact that the data suggests that it's not a major issue is, I think, what Chief Carlson is saying is not reflective of the actual situation, which is that it is a major situation for the businesses, big and small. And our hope is to get them to be more engaged, and for us to be able to help take down specifically some of these prolific, you know, retail thieves. And it'll be helpful to have, you know, I know that Councilmember Jurinsky's bringing forward something, but the more teeth that we can put around with penalties towards some of these, you know, prolific offenders will be helpful. But just getting raising the awareness with the retailers, big and small, that we need them to report. And we had the same issue when we were talking about motor vehicle theft and break-ins. A lot of people would talk about it, but they weren't reporting it. And it doesn't help, you know, as we're trying to allocate resources if we don't have the data that suggests that this is as big of an issue as it actually is. So any other questions or comments on this topic?
Councilmember Zvonek, if I could.
Yes, sir.
I spoke to the district attorney, John Kellner, and he was very aware of the recent media coverage on this issue in the corridor. And he and I had a conversation, and he wanted to make clear to us, certainly share the message, that if we can develop any quality felony cases, which, as Cassidy has pointed out, can be difficult to do, he's got a retail theft unit, and he says he's fully ready to go. The challenge for us is what Cassidy has outlined, but
yeah,
the district attorney is fully on board.
That's great. Okay, if no other questions or comments on this topic, we'll go to next item, which is the back to school safety updates. And it looks like it's you're up again, Chief Carlson.
I'll be running the slideshow, but I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Lonnie Eddy. He oversees our SRO unit, and so he will take over the presentation.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Yeah, so this is back to school safety update. And we'll get the PowerPoint up in a minute. The overview, though, is I'll quickly talk about the staffing and new policy involving active critical incidents. talk a little bit about our training and improved access into the schools, as well as training that we've offered to the school administrators from the police, and prevention tips. Most of those we get from Safe to Tell. There we go. And the last is the reassurance messaging that we're putting out to school staff. So that's concerning staffing and policy. Next slide, Chief. We had 12 SROs in our schools, and we staff 2 SROs per high school. We've increased staffing to 18 now, so we're staffing the 9 major high schools in Aurora with 2 SROs in each high school. So that's a plus on the staffing side. Recently, a directive on active critical incidents was updated that says that officers shall enter a location if they believe that a suspect is actively engaged in shooting other persons, or the suspect still possesses an immediate threat. Before this, we would usually go in 2, 3, or 5-man teams into schools or a business where we thought there was an active shooter. This updated directive tells us that the first officer on scene will go in if they believe that there's active shooting taking place. So it's something that most of us were already going to do, but this kind of puts it on paper, saying we're not going to wait for backup and we'll immediately advance in and go to the threat. Next slide, please. On training, as I mentioned, everyone goes. When we have an active critical incident, every sworn police officer goes to the scene. This year, we focused on the single officer response, and that was our 3rd quarter in service. We used Vista Peak High School in order to facilitate the single officer response. If you're the first one there, you hear shooting, you go in. How are you going to go in by yourself? Because normally we work in teams of at least 2 people. We have training in that. This one we didn't, but now we do. So we have a single officer response training for responding to an active shooter. We also bring in the fire department in a system called Asher, and it's where the police will clear certain areas of the school, make it a hot zone, maybe a warm zone to where we don't think there's anyone there, but maybe we have victims. So the fire department dons ballistic helmets and vests, and they go into the school escorted by the police to go in and extract victims, to get them out of the school and get them care as soon as possible, get them outside and triage them. Also this year in July, we used Vista Peak High School to train with the security teams from both schools, which is Aurora Public Schools and Cherry Creek School District. Now, we do train with them every year, but this year we brought them in for this single officer response training to train with our SROs, and also gave them training in the Asher training with the fire department, so they know what to expect if the fire department has to go in there and extract victims. So that was very good training. We usually do some type of training every year with them. We're also looking at improved access into the schools. We already have proximity cards and some keys for the schools, but not enough. So we're reaching out to the schools to get more proximity cards and keys. Cherry Creek School District is unique in that they have Knox boxes on the outside of all of their schools. It's similar to the red fire department Knox box. These ones are blue. They have proximity cards, and they also have interior door keys, as well as a QR code that is mounted on the box on the inside, to where you can scan it with your phone quickly and you can get a floor plan of the school. So that's what Cherry Creek has offered, and we have dozens of those keys on our patrol officer and our patrol sergeant key rings, as well as all the SROs have those keys. So we're in the process of getting even more of those keys, so that every officer on patrol will have those keys, and the proximity card should go out to every officer in the department eventually. Also, if we have to make hard entry because we don't have a key, or if something's wrong with the locks, we still have our RAMs and we have our pry tools that all the sergeants have on patrol, all the SROs have, And we've introduced a new way to get in the doors, absent those methods, and that's a breaching shotgun, which is supposed to defeat the locking mechanisms on the door. So that's our newest way of getting in if we don't have a key and we have to get in. The breaching shotgun is very effective for that, and it's low risk to anyone on the other side of the doors, because when they lock down, they do the lockdown drills. Teachers and students move away from the doors, but these doors are just designed to impact the locking mechanism. Actually, it's the throw that is that connects the door to the door jamb that is defeating, not really the lock. So we've trained with that. Most of our SROs have had that training, and that training is going out wider as well. We have the shotguns, we just have to deploy them into the schools and store them in the lockers, in the schools, in the SRO offices, in the event that they are needed. So this year we also rolled out some training for the school administrators, primarily the principals, and offer them a 1-hour tabletop exercise where we'll come out, someone from the academy will come up with a scenario, we'll have a patrol sergeant, 2 patrol officers, and we'll go over a hypothetical event with the administrators. We'll explain to them what we would do in response to that situation. We would see what their team would do, how we would communicate, and just so we know what to expect from each other going forward if something like this were to happen. So this is a great program. We've already had 11 Aurora Public Schools that have stepped forward saying we're interested in this. So the principals and the deans are on board with this, and we'll probably be very busy doing this throughout the year, but it's going to help with information sharing and a response if something were to happen. On the prevention side, we get safe details from both school districts. The officers get them for their schools, and the SRO supervisors get them for both school districts in the city of Aurora. We do get these throughout the year, very frequently, multiple ones per day. Some of them do talk about students who are armed. Oftentimes it will be a photo of a suspect pointing a gun into a mirror, posing with the handgun, those types of things. Our SROs will try to identify who that person is. And if we have other information that is given to us in these anonymous tips, we get a hold of the intel unit, and they're pretty good about helping us with email addresses, phone numbers, and those types of things to try to track down who this person is if we cannot identify them. SROs take care of this during the daytime, but if it's at night or on the weekends, patrol officers will respond out. If we can get the address, they make contact with these kids and their parents, and normally they deny it, or it was a misunderstanding or something like that, but we do investigate those. We pull GOs on those, and we do reports on those in the event that that documentation is needed later, but those are investigated usually through the safe details. And then we also get a lot of communication through the anonymous reports and safe details about the possibility of violence, suicide, homicidal kind of things. We work with our CRT unit who uses their target violence prevention program to address those things. We also lean on intel again for those types of things. And then also the detectives will come in and help with the investigations if we need them. Most of that stuff comes in through safe detail, and again, it's monitored by the SRO unit. And dispatch gets all of those and puts calls in for service. They also put information calls in there, so that's all taken care of through safe detail. It's a very good system, and has helped us identify a lot of things previously. We put some reassurance messaging out to the staff of the schools on July 25th. Aurora Public Schools had a large meeting with 150 of their deans and principals. The chief and his staff went out there and gave a presentation to those deans and principals. And then Aurora TV also helped us put together a video from the SROs, the chief, and also from our police academy to address our commitment to school security and our response and thoughts on that, and reassurance to all the staff. And they had in service for Aurora Public Schools, which was about 4,500 staff members, and that video went out to them on the 5th of August. Cherry Creek School is doing their in-service this week, and I don't know when they're going to show that video, but that'll go out to probably even a larger audience since it's a very large school district as well. So we are getting that messaging out, and it seems like it's been very well received so far. So that is the update for back to school. Aurora Public Schools started on Tuesday, and Cherry Creek School starts next Tuesday. So we're up and running in the SROs and ready for any questions if you have any concerning that.
Any questions?
Councilmember Zvonek.
Yep, go ahead.
So in that, thank you for that presentation. In the update to an active shooter situation, that word shall, we've just seen it present gray area a lot of times, that it can be interpreted may or may not. And it's sad that we're in a time that we would have to even tell officers that, hey, if there's children being murdered inside this school, and you are the first officer on scene, or you find yourself, go inside and try to save children. And it's unimaginable for me to think that maybe we need to make this more clear, but I think we need to make this more clear. I don't like that term shall. And if we have any Aurora police officers that would be in that gray area, I'm sure the Uvalde, Texas Police Department is hiring. I would just like to get rid of that shall and make it a will. An officer will enter the building where children are being murdered.
Councilmember, I'll leave this to one of the city attorneys, but I think that the legal term shall is actually the strongest word that you can use because it requires them to do it. But I'm not an attorney, so I'll have our attorneys.
Shall has been challenged in other things that we have done.
Councilmember Zvonek, this is Megan Platt with the City Attorney's Office. That is correct. Shall is actually a stronger legal term than will.
Yes, that's what I thought. Any other questions?
Councilmember Zvonek, I have some additional information. I had met with Chris Smith, superintendent of Cherry Creek Public Schools, I think last week. And when Lieutenant Eddie showed you all that breaching equipment, as he explained, right now we have that available to the SROs and in the sergeant's patrol cars. Thanks to a generous donation from Cherry Creek Schools, we're going to purchase enough of those devices to put in every patrol car. So every officer will have that, as soon as we can acquire that equipment. And we're going to be putting a lot more of those breaching shotguns, not just in the sergeant's patrol cars, but in others as well. So Chris Smith has really stepped up with that donation. And we do fully expect that once we explain the tabletop exercises that we offer to Aurora Public Schools, that schools in Cherry Creek administrators are going to take advantage of that as well. Some good news out of Cherry Creek.
That's great news. Other questions or comments on this topic? Okay, seeing none. Final agenda item for the day is, again, APD, and this is the mesh camera expansion proposal. Looks like it's Lieutenant Poppy that's going to be presenting this?
It is. Good morning. Is there a way I can share my screen, or if it's easier to just review to the eScribe packet presentations at the end of that?
Is there a way you can share?
Looks like I just got approval.
Got it. Great.
Did that work?
Can everybody see it?
Yes. Got it, Chris.
Chris, you're good.
Go ahead.
All right. Good morning. I just wanted to thank Chief Oates for allowing us to do this. Chief Oates and our partners over in IT have always supported all of our technology needs to help the police department get their job done. We've been doing mesh cameras around town for at least 10 years. It started small with a grant, and it has continued to expand. With Chief Oates' approval, we proposed a larger expansion to that. Just briefly, what we use the cameras for, a lot of these are positioned throughout town to capture activity in major intersections or around known crime locations, or just in venues that are really difficult for us to surveil with traditional methods. The system of cameras we use daily, it captures criminal acts, it helps us investigate traffic crashes, allows us to identify suspects or vehicles or direction to travel, monitor active incidents, or develop suspect patterns of life. We also use it a lot to track the travel of stolen vehicles through town. The position of a lot of these cameras allows for officers to observe the location of a call for service remotely even before they arrive. So this allows for some pre-planning in their response when they're going to calls for service. We use a lot of different technology, and at Chief So's challenge, he asked me what we believed would be the most beneficial at the moment. And let me see how I scan down. So some of our existing technology that we use is the mesh cameras. We have license plate readers. This is a system that's also under research now to come up with what the future of this is going to look like. The technology's advanced a lot since we got into this, and there are definitely some exciting new advances that have come forward with that we're looking at. Gunshot detection, known as ShotSpotter, we've looked at, and then kind of all of that ties into what might be a big picture thing down the road is a real-time crime center. The video evidence in police work has just become such a major part of what we do. We have so many sources of video, including our own network, our cameras. Citizens are constantly helping us with cell phone videos. Businesses have security cameras that we're able to access, obviously with our permission. RTD buses and every station has cameras. Neighborhood and residential systems like Ring or Nest. The video availability to allow cops to do their job has expanded so much that it is such a powerful tool. What we've asked for to expand the mesh network from 40 cameras that we currently have is to, 50 cameras we currently have is to add another 40. These are some of what we already talked about, where they are and why we're using them. I'm just going to keep moving. This is what our user interface side looks like. And this was just a snapshot of some of the cameras that we have currently set up on Colfax. All of them have, well, the majority of them have pan, tilt, zoom capability. So as events are unfolding, detectives or officers even are able to move these cameras so that they're getting the most advantageous view that either helps them identify suspects or investigate crimes as they're happening. Or as in the case earlier this week, we actually captured a shooting on the camera system, and that became extremely valuable to the homicide investigators. I think we also consider this to be a bit of a force multiplier. When we have officers that are working a scene, we can have other officers scouring the cameras and trying to figure out patterns where our suspects are moving around. It allows us to do immediate research, and if we do get information, we can broadcast that either through emails or through the CAD system to everybody working the shift, and it definitely affects the overall efficiency of what we're trying to do. Our proposed expansion, we kind of broke it down into 2 phases. The first phase was 20 cameras, and it increased our coverage on major travel corridors, and it specifically added some cameras around hospitals. We're finding more and more shooting victims show up at hospitals, and we're unable to figure out who brought them there. And oftentimes those are such critical witnesses that we need to figure out who they are quicker than waiting for the victim to help us. Phase 2 is another 20 cameras, and that would enhance the coverage around schools, parks, and other major travel corridors. The last thing I have here on this slide is kind of a graphic that shows current and future ideas on this expansion. The black dots you see here are where we currently have cameras, and the network was originally set up along Colfax, which is why we have such a heavy presence of cameras there. As the team figured out that it was working and it was really successful, it has expanded beyond that. So there's coverage on Alameda, there's coverage on Mississippi and Iliff. This year we received funding through a JAG grant to expand it down Havana and then two other locations. One is going to be 13th and Chambers, another one is Chambers and Hampton. Those were pre-identified last year just based on the need. The Havana corridor is somewhat specific to what Chief Carlson was talking about with the retail theft initiative in that area. And I think that these cameras will enhance those investigations and the project that we're working on there. What I described as phase 1 earlier is the red dots represented on this map, and phase 2 is the purple dots. We have done our best to not just load up one part of town, and we've consulted with our homicide detectives, our crime analysts, our narcotics investigators, patrol officers, really asked them the question, where would you like to have cameras? Where would have helped in past investigations to provide you with some enhanced investigative tools? That's largely how this was mapped out. If we were to put a map of the city where we have a lot of hot spots of crime, these are also probably going to represent similar areas. Many of these cover corridors that we know we have criminals frequently traveling. A lot of those are towards the north end of town. We know we have a lot of people commuting between Aurora and Montbello, and we wanted some coverage there so we could use our cameras. We've seen an enhanced travel of people going out east, even towards Murphy Creek, so we have added it that way. And then picked up a lot of the other major corridors. We've added several of these that are around parks or schools because we're seeing an increase in violent crime in those areas. And as I stated earlier, around hospitals. So we have it both around Aurora South Hospital on Potomac, and we've added some that are in the area of University and Children's Hospital. Both of those have a robust system already of cameras, and currently we don't have direct access. So what we were trying to create with that is something that our officers could immediately access without having to meet with their counterparts on those hospital systems. They're very cooperative, but it just is an extra step. We're trying to improve the efficiency. Based on current costs that we're paying for the equipment, we came up with to do the full expansion, phase 1 and 2, which is 40 more cameras, includes the cameras, the network enhancements to reach all those areas, and then training two new civilian employees that we're already working on hiring. It would be a base cost of $174,000, and to upgrade that to the 4K cameras that gives us the best resolution and would absolutely be the best tool given today's technology, that ups it to $218,200. That was the amount that I proposed to Chief Oates, and with his support, we are looking forward to moving forward with this project, and of course, council's support. I think that's all that I had for a very brief presentation, but I'm excited to hear your questions.
Any questions on this topic or comments?
Is there, that's Councilmember Zvonek.
Go ahead, sir.
Is there a capability here of a type of maybe rudimentary shot spotter detection from these cameras if need be?
That's a great question. The shot spotter technology is completely separate from our existing camera system. We explored shot spotter, and it is a great tool in many cities. When we analyzed the benefit we were hoping to get out of shot spotter, we didn't find the benefit to be as valuable as what we believe we would get from the cameras. Just a brief explanation of the shot spotter. On our research and what we've learned from our partners over in Denver, they're paying $70,000 a year to cover 1 square mile of Denver with the shot spotter technology. They are paying for that largely with grants, and we found that that was just not the best value for our money at this time. We felt that we would have a better investigative benefit from the camera systems.
I see. Thank you for the presentation, Lieutenant.
Any other questions?
If I could offer a comment, Councilmember Zvonek, I hope my microphone is better now.
Yep, much better.
An adjustment. I apologize for that. we can continue to revisit ShotSpotter, but, and maybe this is something for the new chief in a couple of months to tackle. We're convinced that for the buck, this is the most important investment we can make right now. Now, we fully expect to follow this with a second wave and some adjustments and additions with regard to license plate readers. That's the other key tool. There's some challenges around our current platform, and it's time for an evolution in technology. We're trying to figure that out before we go forth and expand any of the license plate readers. We've seen ShotSpotter work really effectively in certain parts of the country, maybe where there's a little more density. But I fully expect the new chief will want to tackle that issue again with our internal folks. But for right now, the biggest bang for the buck is cameras, followed by an upgrade in our license plate reader system, probably a conversation in a couple of months once we figure out the new technology.
Other questions or comments on this topic? Okay, seeing none, I think that is the last item on our agenda. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 8th, same time. Any conflicts with that?
Councilmember Zvonek?
Yep.
Actually, the next item is miscellaneous matters for concern, and I have something I would like to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Some updates that I've been given while on this meeting is that we in fact have 0 applications in from any New York police officers, and also regarding the sedative for fire, it appears that the union was not consulted on this and is not in support of this. So I stand firm that we should not have our firefighters injecting anyone with anything right now. And I would encourage all firefighters to not do that. That's what I wanted to say.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we'll see you all on September 8th at 8:30 a.m. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.